Okay, so I'm going to teach you guys trigonometry. Now, I know you're taking geometry, but why is trigonometry important? Because it's for right triangles only, okay? And I know some of you guys have heard these words before. You've heard of sine, cosine, and tangent. Well, those are the three main trig ratios, right? And I don't know if you guys have ever heard SOHCAHTOA, right? The SOHCAHTOA is a way to help you memorize sine, cosine, and tangent. All these are their ratios, which means they're fractions, okay? And sine is a fraction of the opposite side over the hypotenuse in a right triangle. That's all it is, okay? Cosine is the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. And tangent is the opposite side over the adjacent side. That's all trigonometry is. It's making ratios, which are making fractions or decimals, right? And I'll show you, we're going to get fractions and decimals. And so, you know, I always say SOHCAHTOA because it goes sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse, the cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and the tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. And so, you know, I'm going to be honest with you guys, you need to memorize this, okay? This is the basis of trigonometry. So let's do some quick problems. Number one, when you look at a right triangle, you need to know where the opposite side is, where the adjacent side is, and where the hypotenuse side is. And if you know those, you can make all of the ratios and all of the fractions. So let's look at this. In this triangle here, right, they want us to identify the hypotenuse, the opposite side of z, and the adjacent side of z. So just remember, you guys all know where the hypotenuse is. It's always across from the right angle, or it's the biggest side of the triangle. And if you guys did the Pythagorean theorem, you should know where the hypotenuse is always, okay? Now, where's the opposite side? If I go to z, right, opposite z is the side that's all the way across, right? Okay, so if z is the angle that's over here on the right, the opposite side is on the left. This is called the opposite side, right? Okay, and next to z, right, obviously the hypotenuse is right next to z, but the adjacent, remember, adjacent means next to. What's next to z? Next to z is this side of the triangle, okay? And you guys have to know those two things. So if I fill out this information, the hypotenuse, I'm going to write that the hypotenuse is equal to this side here. I'm going to call it YZ, if I have to name the side. The opposite, or the side opposite of Z, is the one over here on the left. I'm going to call that XY, right? Okay? And then the side that's next to Z is the one that's on the top here. I'm going to call it XZ. And in order for us to do trigonometry, you need to know, right, where the opposite side is, where the adjacent side is, and the easiest one is the hypotenuse, okay? Let's do the next example here. They want me to identify the hypotenuse. There's the right angle. Opposite is the hypotenuse, okay? I'm going to call that HU. That's the longest side of the triangle. It's opposite the right angle. Now, angle H, the side opposite angle H is highlighted. Opposite it is over here. I'm going to call that the opposite, and I'm going to call that IU. And then the side adjacent, which is next to, which is, I always do that last, right? It's next to, I'm going to call that, we'll call it HI. So, hi, HI. And that's it. Guys, trigonometry is knowing where these three sides are. Everyone can do the hypotenuse. The opposite's the one across from it. And then the adjacent side's the one next to it. Okay, last one, and then we'll set up the fractions. Hypotenuse. Oh, look, see how there's a letter there now? Okay, that letter's in the middle. The hypotenuse is K, okay? Now, the opposite side, or the side opposite of Y, opposite is over here. I'm going to put that O, right? Opposite OPP, that's J. And then the adjacent is the one next to it. Okay, that's L. That's it. So, the whole point of this lesson is to do the fractions, right? And here is a problem you're going to see. It's going to be like this on IXL. And so, hey, right? Let's read it. Which ratio, meaning which fraction, represents the cosine of A? You see that? See how they said the cosine of A? Now it's one of these four choices. So I'm going to go and I'm going to find angle A, and I'm going to make that my angle. That's really called the reference angle. And I'm going to do this. Hey, hypotenuse is 13, okay? Across from the hypotenuse is the opposite side, that's 12. And then the adjacent is 5. Now, when it says cosine, I just got to remember, what does cosine mean? Guys, at the top of my paper, I always write so, and then I write ka, and then I write toa. And this gives me, right, what the ratios are. Sine is the opposite in the hypotenuse, and then cosine is the adjacent in the hypotenuse. Do you realize that cosine, I'm going to write it, is the adjacent over the hypotenuse? Okay? That's what cosine is. So if I do the cosine of angle A, I need the adjacent side and the hypotenuse. And I'm going to make a fraction. I'm going to do the adjacent side over the hypotenuse, which is 13, right? So the answer should be 5 over 13, right? And that's choice number 1. That's the cosine. It's the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. Remember, these are all fractions. They're called ratios, right? Sometimes you could turn any we could turn any fraction into a decimal, but they always represent as fractions most of the time. You'll see what's going to happen next. Okay, let's do number 2. Number 2 says, let's do the sine of P. Now, I just need to know, what is sine? Sine is opposite and hypotenuse. So the fraction for sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse, okay? And it's on the beginning of the video if you don't remember that. It's the first page of the notes. You need to know those. So you need to know this. SOHCAHTOA always helps me. Now, I'm going to figure out the opposite side. So P is here. You know what? There's the hypotenuse. Okay, that's 10. I need that. And the opposite side is over here. It's 6. I don't even need 8 because 8 is the adjacent side, and I don't want the adjacent side. I want the opposite over the hypotenuse. So that fraction is going to be 6 over 10 if I follow what sine is. So look, that's choice number 1 again. It's pretty easy. Once you know the fractions, which are called the ratios, right? You could set up any of these. And you need to know SOHCAHTOA, big deal here. And you need to know where the opposite adjacent hypotenuse. You guys are going to have to practice this. Okay, let's do a couple more. Let's do number 3. Number 3, blah, 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 blah. It says over here, I want to know what the tangent of C is. So I'm going to go to angle C, which is there. I'm going to say, hey, hypotenuse is 17. It's the biggest one. Opposite is over here. It's 8. And next to C is the adjacent. It's over here, 15. Now, I just got to remember what tan is. Tangent is. See how it's tangent, TOA? O and A, that's opposite and adjacent. So tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. And that means I need to get the opposite side and the adjacent side, and that's the ratio, that's the fraction. Opposite is 8, adjacent's 15. So it's 8 over 15. Oh my God, it's choice number 1 again. I didn't choose these multiple choice questions. They can't all be number 1. All right, but that's it. Okay, that's all you guys are doing. We'll do 2 more questions and then we'll be out. Okay, this one says, what's the sine of X? You guys realize that X is right over here, so they're telling you the angle is X. Sine, from SOHCAHTOA, sine is opposite and hypotenuse. So it's the opposite over the hypotenuse. Get the numbers. Hypotenuse is 15. Easy. Opposite is 8. So the answer to this is 8 over 15. Right? And then that's it. I'm done. You know? I mean, there's nothing to it. I'm just going to do number 5, and then I'm going to stop, right? Okay? This one wants to know the sine of L, the cosine of L, and the tan of L. They're making me work. Sine is the opposite over the hypotenuse. The cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, okay? And the tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. Yes, I'm a math teacher and I know those, but you do them 20 times and it sticks in your brain. And so just remember, we're talking about angle L here, angle L, angle L. I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna mark L as my angle. And then I'm going to find the opposite, the hypotenuse, and the adjacent. Remember, hypotenuse is the easiest, right? It's 10. The opposite of L is over here at 6. And then next to L is 8. It's the adjacent. So watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to figure out all the fractions. The sign, draw a line over here, draw a line over here. The sign is 6 over 10. That's the answer to that one. The cosine is the adjacent. That's 8 over 10. Done. And then the tangent is the opposite 6 over the adjacent. Done. Those are the answers. There's the sine, there's the cosine, and there's the tangent. Okay? Guys, it's pretty easy. That's all you got to do. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I'll write the answers really down for this one. Okay? This the sine here is 12 over 13. The cosine here is 9 over 13. Right? And then the tangent for this one is 12 over 9. Okay? Those are the answers to number 6. You guys can try them on your own. And you know what? You guys can skip 7 and 8 if you want. Okay? Now, the beautiful thing about this video is you can rewind it. Go back and watch it. Okay? You have an IXL assignment to do, but I also gave you practice problems with answers so you guys can go back and practice them. Good luck.